All right, so let's talk about cell communication. So you just watched a video that sort of describes the different types of cell communication. We're also going to do a POGL on it, so it should be pretty easy, or maybe you've already done the POGL. But just to reiterate here, so cells need to communicate, right? So to me, this is amazing that all throughout our body, cells are communicating with one another. So they need to send messages. Should I grow? Should I not grow? Should I release this hormone? Should I not release this hormone? When should I do that, right? So we need to communicate between those cells, and it's amazing how quickly this happens inside of us and inside organisms, but these cells communicate. I will tell you, that this is a new unit that is not covered in biology, so this will be very technical and very different than anything you learned in biology, right? This is definitely more detailed than we do in regular biology, but I think we'll break it down hopefully, and you'll understand the need for this cell communication. If you've taken Anatomy 2 or going to, we talk a lot about cell communication in the immune system, right? We got to know when an invader comes and what do I do to try to get rid of that invader, right? So there's a lot of communication going on there with the immune system. All right, so let's start with types of cell communication. So I'm going to start down here actually with autocrine. So autocrine is the term auto means self. So it's self-communication. So basically, it's weird, but a cell will release a product, and this product is typically called a ligand. All right, we're going to see that here in a little bit. I'll get back to that. But then it goes onto its own receptors, and it causes a reaction. Okay? So autocrine's pretty easy. It signals itself to do something. Okay? So it may release a chemical, and it attaches to a receptor on the cell membrane of the same cell, and it causes a reaction. Okay, pretty simple, autocrine. And then we get to local signaling. So local signaling means that cells are either touching or in close contact with one another. So it's not the same cell, but it's going to signal another cell that's either touching it or in close contact. All right, so here's the direct contact. Cells can be in direct contact, and they don't have to like constantly be in direct contact, but somehow they touch each other. And in an animal cell, the cell membrane, again, has pores, right? And those pores can line up, and it can send a chemical messenger from one cell to the other, all right, or a chemical messenger from this cell to the other. All right, so those protein channels can actually line up and allow for messengers to flow back and forth between the two cells. That's more difficult in a plant cell because a plant cell has a cell wall, but there are also pores that can happen in a cell wall that allow for that to cross, all right, that cell wall. So again, the cells are in direct contact with one another, okay? Then there is this is called juxtacrine, when the cells are like touching each other. There's another way to do it where you're not like going through the cell membrane, but here, let me erase this so that you can see it. All right, so here a cell has a little piece on it, like a projection or a protein that has a certain shape. Remember, proteins have shape. And it fits with a receptor on another cell that also has a certain shape, and then that cell will then respond because it has a receptor that fits with that protein shape from this molecule, from this cell. All right, so this is cell-to-cell recognition, or called juxtacrine. This is huge in the immune system. And in fact, just to give you an example here, when a cell, there's types of cells in the immune system that engulf invaders, like viruses, bacteria. And they take a piece of the protein that's from that virus or bacteria that helps cells recognize it, and they send it to the surface of the cell. And then this is called a helper T cell. It will go and recognize that, hey, that's a foreign protein, and then it will send signals out to then find that protein, and wherever you find it, let's get rid of it, right? So that's a way to signal that, hey, this virus is in me, and I need to break it down. Okay, so this happens all the time in the immune system, this cell-to-cell recognition, where it will recognize foreign proteins and it will send out signals to help fight that off anywhere it sees that foreign protein. But it has to recognize that first, so it has a type of cell that will dock with it and recognize that that doesn't belong to me. So we all have proteins. We know that on the cell membranes we have all different kinds of proteins, and some of those help the immune system determine what belongs to me and what doesn't, right? So I have certain proteins on my cells that you're not going to have on your cells. And so if I were to receive one of your cells, my immune system should say, hey, those proteins don't match me. That's foreign and I need to break it down. All right, so those proteins can be then presented on the surface of a cell so that immune cells can recognize, hey, this is the invader, this is what I need to look for. All right, so that's called cell-to-cell recognition. This is called juxtacrine, right? They're touching, basically, all right, in this case, okay? And in the video, it was like, hey, here, give you a list, right, to go to the grocery store, right? Here's a Post-it note. These are the things you need to get. I need to be able to give that to you in order for you to go then do something, okay? That's called juxtacrine. All right, next is called paracrine, and paracrine is also local signaling. The cells will send messages to any cell that's nearby. Notice they're not touching, and there's a space in between this cell and the next, but it's still sending out messages, and any cell that's nearby is going to receive that message. Okay, that's called paracrine. And a big example of this is in the nervous system. So this is a nerve, and this is a cell, like a digestive cell, muscle cell, all right, that it is going to control. All right, let me get rid of this. And basically what it does is the nerve at the ending, notice there's a space in between the nerve and the cell, right? It's not touching, it's not that juxtacrine, right? And this is a synapse, this space in between the nerve and another cell. And that nerve will release chemical messengers that will get absorbed by this cell to cause it to send a message or to do some response, right? So how does the nerve cell get another cell to do a job? Is it releases these chemical messengers into the synapse, into the space. This cell will probably have receptors that recognize that and then cause a reaction here. It literally could be another nerve that says, hey, I'm sending a message from this nerve to this nerve. Now this nerve needs to send a message somewhere else. Or it could be a nerve going to a muscle cell and tells the muscle to contract. All right, but there's chemical messengers that go across this space. Notice they're not touching, so this is called paracrine. It's close by signaling. All right, but it only affects cells that are close by. Okay, so that's called paracrine signaling. And the last type of signaling is long-distance signaling, and this happens all the time in the endocrine system, where a cell could be, so our endocrine system consists of all of our glands, pituitary, thyroid's in the neck, pituitary's in the brain. The pituitary controls growth. So it needs to go to the bones, right? And thyroid also helps with growth. It needs to go to the bones. How does it do that? How does it signal those bones to grow? Well, it releases a hormone, a chemical signal, into, usually a protein, into the bloodstream. That chemical signal is a hormone. And it will travel through the bloodstream, and it will then dock with a cell that has a receptor for that chemical protein, and then that cell will respond to that. Okay, so this happens all the time. So this is long-distance signaling because it's going through the bloodstream and going to a cell somewhere else in the body. It's not even close by, but it can travel through the bloodstream. And so how do only certain cells respond to that chemical signal? If it's in the bloodstream, why don't all cells respond? Well, it's because only certain cells have the receptor that will dock with that protein, has a certain shape that will allow it to fit with that protein signal, and therefore that's the only cell that responds. So if you don't have the receptor, it's not going to be able to bond and you're not going to get a response. Okay, so only those that have receptors are going to respond. So if I need the bones to grow, then the bone cell should have that receptor that then can respond to that and have a response from that chemical signal. Okay, so that is an example of long-distance signaling used a lot in the endocrine system, right? That's what they do, release hormones into the bloodstream to go somewhere else, and cause a reaction somewhere else in the body. Okay, so 3 big types of cell signaling: the endocrine, the long distance, the local signaling where it just goes close by. All right, so we have paracrine and juxtacrine, and then we have autocrine, where they do signal themselves. Okay? All right, so that's just an introduction to types of cell signaling.